I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, everyone. It is March 9th. It is 12 p.m. It's Wednesday, one of my favorite times of the week. Tipping points and puzzle pieces with Mark Boatwright-Frost. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm awesome today. Thank you very much, Marwan. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. You and I met for several hours yesterday. We meet, looks like about once a month, as busy as we are, to
Yep.
sit and talk and, um,
And
you
drink
know,
good coffee.
yep, drink good coffee. Had a good conversation that we'll get into a little bit on the show later. What I did last night, and then we have our little pre-talk before, so feeling jazzed up and motivated, invigorated, energized.
Invigorated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't want to feel eviscerated. So,
Yeah. No, definitely not.
so,
Keep the guts inside the belly.
so we'll keep it in the ease. But yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yep. Hey, I do want to uplift Cups Cafe downtown where we have these meetings. And I'm sending off an email to ask if we can do podcasts there periodically to do short podcasts.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Well, shout out to Cups. We'll go ahead and give them a yep. Yeah, definitely good food and nice comfortable places to hang out and just kind of talk for hours. So it is pretty awesome.
Yep.
Well, we got a great show to get into today. And you actually said that you had a post that had 500 hits within 2
About the
hours.
show. Yeah, I on Wednesday mornings I start putting up the ad for today's show, and I talk about what it is. I put up something, and I'm putting up a more generic ad now to catch people's attention. Um, and I put it up around 10 this morning. By noon, it had 500 hits.
Wow.
So we want people, and there's a second post going up that I'm still working on, so it's not officially up yet. That talks about joining us live on the podcast instead of viewing it after so
Mhm.
that you can become part of the conversation.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I think that'll be pretty awesome and a great experience for people. So, we're gonna jump into today's topic. And you sent me, and I've seen this before. What was that? Doctor the scientist guy, the space guy. I guess he's a
Yeah.
lot.
And now I'm going to completely blank on his Neil deGrasse
Yeah,
Tyson.
Neil deGrasse. Yeah, right. He's a cool dude. But intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Dent. Thank you for letting us know that we look good and we sound good. That's always a good thing for
Good
sure.
afternoon, Rob.
So, why was this important for you?
Well, I thought, given the topic today about paradigm shifts,
Mm,
and you wanted to put up the definition of paradigm shift?
yeah, let me pull that up there.
So paradigm shift is basically looking at and shifting base assumptions that you have about any given situation to change your perspective of a situation so that you can actually address it. Um, you know, uh, the standard saying is that assuming is making an ass of you and me.
Mm,
And we do it all the time. I do it, you do it, everybody assumes. And we have some base assumptions about how life works. And until we really address it, hi, Pastor Ellington, until we really address those assumptions, we can't fix the problems we have, the endemic problems we have. And we can't face those assumptions until we learn how to sit down and talk to each other and find commonality and figure out a way to work together to fix the problems. All of us, everyone.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that's going to require a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So, just because I love my definitions according
Yep.
uh here. To pronounce the noun fundamental change in approach or underlying assumptions.
Yes.
Okay. What is meant by a paradigm shift, kind of more in layman's terms. Image result for a paradigm shift definition. Accordingly, a paradigm shift is defined as an important change that happens when the usual way of thinking or thinking about or doing something is replaced by a new and a different way.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw a saying from Alcoholics Anonymous in here right now. Their definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome.
Okay.
So we've been doing that for a very long time. We throw money at school systems, we expect a different outcome. We do the same thing over and over again with no fundamental change. We need a paradigm shift. We need to start doing things differently, and we need to start doing things differently together. So we have to create a social contract together and agree on what outcomes we want and start working on real solutions to get there.
100% facts there. Um, and we hear that a lot, and sometimes people are intellectually dishonest. Let's say, we use the defund the police, right?
Mhm.
And in defund the police, what we say is, hey, you know what? Taking money away from the police isn't going to be the right thing to do, right? And at the same time, giving the police more money isn't the right thing to do, right? Well, you can't just keep throwing money at a problem that's going to solve it, right? That's not going to bring
Doing the
down
same
crime.
thing
It's not gonna
again
do
and
this,
again and expecting a different outcome.
right? But the difference would be, hey, you know what you're going to do is one, our police don't need to be militarily armed to the teeth, but two, the resources that are spent should be to actually protect and serve. I think the serve piece is kind of being left out there. And so there's
Yep.
a lot of folks that are experiencing mental health, and there's some different ways to do things. It's not,
We need to add one word to that.
what's that?
Protect and serve the entire community.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it. But it's not in a tank top and shorts and go on police and protect and serve in that way. That's not what defund the police is, right? So that's the
No,
definition of insanity.
but let's be honest. Let's be honest with that. And talk about intellectual honesty.
Mhm.
Defund the police is a meme to hook people and get them into an emotional argument, which takes away from the actual discussion that needs to be had, which is much more than a 3 word statement about defunding the police. The conversation has to be had is how do you use the resources in police to better serve the community? And that's a conversation that's being completely missed in all of this. And then you're right. We have to demilitarize the police because we aren't having that kind of crime rate. Tanks aren't necessary for burglaries and rapes and assaults and all of the rest of that. That's You don't need a tank for that. You don't need, uh, you know, we're not having gang wars in Bremerton. We're not having um, armed insurrections with mafia in Bremerton. We have people that need help, and we have people who are being abused. Now, if you call the police because you've got somebody broke into your house, they may send somebody out to take a report, or they may have you do it over the phone, or you
Mhm.
may have to come to the station to do a report. But that's all that's going to happen. We also know that Bremerton's police department has been at its very bottom minimum requirement of manpower for a couple 3 years now. And so, if you want to protect and serve, bring the police up to the amount of manpower you need to do the job, and then
Yep.
train them to serve the entire community, including homeless people, black people, Latino people, poor people, well-off people. You have to serve the entire community.
Well, I think what happens is when you're having a disingenuous conversation, um, when you are trying to advocate for something, you need buzzwords, you need phrases and things like that that people can rally around.
Yeah,
And when people
and that's
wanna
what the
pick apart
three-word
and just
answer
say,
is:
"Well, you know what?
defund the
Defund
police.
the police," right? And so they
Yep.
can latch on to that and just says that you just wanna take these resources and whatnot, and it's such a disingenuous argument. And what it goes to do is muddy up the waters and not to make any progress, right? Because hey, that's my sticking point, and people will make those arguments to ensure that you don't actually move
Well,
forward.
people also believe and repeat back to everyone on Facebook what they saw on a YouTube video, whether it's true or not. They never ask the next question. When I watch, God, I don't want to sound pompous here, but when I watch a YouTube video and it's making challenging assumptions or challenging what I know as the reality of the world, first thing I ask is, where's the source material for your information? I want to know what the source material is. And I want to look at it myself. And most people at this point will go, well, I don't have time for that. I said, but you're trusting what someone's saying without verifying the truth of it.
Right.
And we do a lot of that. And when somebody throws out the defund the police to you, they're working you. They are working you to get you to support whatever their agenda is by getting you rallied around this emotional talking point. What we really need to be doing is not having emotional talking points, but having deep conversations.
Yeah, and that's really it. And that's the paradigm shift, right? Is
It is
going
exactly
beyond
it.
a buzzword or a phrase and saying, okay, so what does that really mean? Let me understand what you mean by defund the police. Because when I hear that, it sounds like police in t-shirts and billy clubs out on the street, you know.
Yeah,
But is that what you intend, or do you intend something different? Do you intend to, cut the police force by 2/3 and just we police ourselves? What are you saying here?
yeah.
And by
Or
having
are
those conversations, things change.
and there are sub discussions going on that don't get anywhere near the airplay as the emotional pull of defund the police, saying we actually want to add services to the police force around social services, mental health, de-escalation, and all of the things that the police are tasked with but aren't trained for.
Gotcha. You know what?
But
I want to
but
pull out of this.
that conversation happens. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in public.
Yeah, I want to pull back from this conversation because this
Sure.
isn't about defund the police. We're
Nope.
just using this
It's
as
about
an example
for
of
paradigm shift.
articulating how a paradigm shift needs to happen, right? How do
Right.
you look at a situation and
So
actually get past all the BS and have a conversation with each other and say, okay, this is how I feel. This is what I believe the needs are. This is how I feel. This is what I believe the needs are. Do I understand what you're saying your needs are? Where do we agree? Where do we differ? And how can we come together and come with something that will work for the most of us in the
so
best way possible? Or are there some new ways
and
to do some things?
and I know we both have examples for this. And so I'll do mine first if that's okay with you.
Sure.
The I'm in the process of writing an article about paradigm shift. And the example I chose to use is that we have an assumption that somebody is going to do it for us, that somebody's going to make this change without us being involved in it. And that is a base foundational assumption. Would you agree?
Yeah.
The government's going to do it, nonprofits are going to do it. So let's talk about that for a minute. In the research I was doing, a couple things. First of all, I want to call out to all nonprofits. I'm a nonprofit. I run a nonprofit, the Resilient Ecosystems, which is driving the Kitsap Resiliency Project. Marwan is president of our board of directors. He's also the executive director of Grow Together, Gather Together, Grow Together, which is a nonprofit doing amazing services for people in Bremerton and the area, in feeding the homeless, giving rides to people, making sure they get where they need to be. It's a great organization. Another great organization, one I like a lot because I love music, is Playing for Change. Their mission over the last 10, 12 years has been to educate and provide musical instruments to children all over the world. Since 2007, they have provided music instruction and instruments for over 40,000 children worldwide. And so I want to call out to nonprofits and how important they are. But I also kind of want to draw a reality check here. And nonprofits do amazing work. And with the resources they are given, they do some brilliant things. But are they going to change the world? Are they going to fix things? There's no way they can because there's not enough money or people involved in nonprofits to get the job done. And one of the things I want to say is that we have 7.9 billion people on this planet. In 2020, let me check the number here, $471.44 billion was given to nonprofits in the United States to do good work. And that was up 5.1% from 2019, which is good news.
Mhm.
But when you look at all of the revenue that was made in the United States that year, we're talking profit here, the actual revenue and profit made in the United States, that's less than 4% in reflection of the total amount of money that was made in this country. If you look at how many people work in nonprofits, and the best number I was able to get was 2016, is 12.3 million jobs are created in the nonprofit sector. Now, they do depend a lot on volunteers, which is a mixed bag, I will tell you. But out of that, that's less than 3.8% of the workforce, available workforce in the United States. So let's call it an even 4% for revenue and even 4% for amount of people working in nonprofits. Is there a reality for the nonprofits being able to actually address the problems in this country when we're giving them less than 4% of anything?
I mean, no, but what's crazy is how much we do with so little. That's an
It is.
amazing stat. When
No,
you
it,
told
it
me that,
is.
it just blew my mind.
Yeah, and we do. What was the old joke? We've done so little, so much with so little for so long. We can do almost anything with nothing at all. Yeah, we haven't quite figured out how to do that yet.
Mhm.
But when you think about that, and you think about the assumption that someone is going to fix the problems for you, climate change, which we're already seeing how devastating that can be, and it's going to get more devastating as it starts affecting food crops and transportation and more destruction, like the tornado in Kentucky, which hadn't seen a tornado in years that happened this year. Um, how is the next question? How is the government actually going to address that? How is a nonprofit really going to address that? And can or will either of those things happen if people don't come together and demand it and have that deeper conversation? So my example of a paradigm shift is we need to shift from the assumption that somebody's going to do it for us and the assumption that a three-word meme is important to a paradigm shift of having discussions with each other, coming together, finding commonalities, and then taking it and pushing it where it needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, we talk about your ongoing question is how do we get together and begin to do this work? How do we get folks to bring their piece to the table? And really, what it is we have to form like Voltron. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Both from an individual standpoint, but organizations themselves.
Yep. I
Because we
love your example, by the way.
we do great work individually and as groups, and in a lot of ways, we are collaborative and we do find ways to work together. But we do need to be more intentional and have the paradigm shift because that's the buzzword of the day, and find some
Yep.
more ways to have those synergies, whether or not we're going and advocating to change policy or putting up our own folks to run for office, things of that nature, and just really holding folks accountable. And that kind of takes us changing our gaze and looking at the things that we don't look at. Okay, you've elected this politician, it's like, okay, you're there, so that they
We
said the
assume you're
things
going to
that
do
we
your
like.
job.
Right. Yeah. We liked what you said. We voted for you. Now you got it. And it's like, no, you got to keep holding them to task, but you also have to also keep supporting them too, right? You can't just,
But
you know,
we also have to create a mutual vision,
right.
and so paradigm shift is something that scares the hell out of most people because it's about change, and people are afraid of change because change is never good, right? Change is always something that's going to be bad. Paycheck, your pink slip is because of change. You lose your house because of change. Climate change is a scare. All this is scary stuff. But let's talk about that honestly. Change is the model of the universe. Nothing stays the same, ever.
Ah, yes, math
We
fun. The only
we
constant
started
is change.
we started the planet Earth started with one continent. We now have seven, and it's still moving and changing. Nothing stays the same. So getting used to change is the first paradigm shift you should have. And thinking the change can be good if we come together and find commonalities and find basic human things that we need to get changed because they aren't being addressed. People aren't being fed. There are people starving in this country every day.
Yeah.
And with gas prices about to go up even more, food prices are going to go up.
Mhm.
Everything is connected.
Well, I'm glad that you made a distinction there and said that, change can also be a good thing. And
Yep,
I think about the change that I've made in my personal life over the last 2 years of going through the pandemic, of being more outwardly focused, getting to know new people, people that I wouldn't normally expanding my bubble. I talked about that, right?
yep,
You don't have to get out of your bubble, just expand your bubble. And I've met a lot of folks that I wouldn't normally, talk with or interact with, and it's been great, right? And I actually have relationships with folks that I wouldn't normally have relationships with, and that's borne a lot of fruit, right? And
yep.
that's you
You and
you
I, for
say
instance.
yeah, yeah, and you say it all the time, right? We have a lot more similarities than we do differences,
Mhm.
and it's just about coming together to have a conversation and talk and, understanding that people are coming at something from their vantage point, and so they only know what they know, they only think what they think, and they're missing information. You're missing information, I'm missing information, and we're putting together and filling it in. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but for most things they're simple enough that we can agree to disagree. Now there may be some
Yep.
some things on the fringe that are some pretty hardline things, but we can still move forward and build and work together for sure.
Well, absolutely. And one of the most important things going back to assumption is we should work very hard not to assume something about somebody until we actually know it. Because we make a lot of assumptions about relationships and people because we're seeing them through our filters of our life experience.
So are you ready for my answer now?
Absolutely.
All right, so let me go ahead and get into it. Let me just pop this here in the chat. So last night I told you we would talk about this a little bit later in the show.
Mhm.
Last night, Kitsap React, they had a community conversation with the elected officials of Bremerton. And what I also want to put in the chat here is that is aired on BCAT if you would like to follow that. And what I want to do is I just want to share with you my parts. My speaking parts at that event, which was last night at 4 p.m. And this is part of that paradigm shift, right? One part on my side is saying, hey, it's not enough for me to be a community leader or a community organizer or running a nonprofit and doing the work and kind of head down and focusing on that alone. I have to now extend my gaze into politics and policy and how things happen. And then on the other side, the city and its elected officials also have to say, you know what, we are actually going to do outreach and want to listen to what their constituents have to say and what they believe and start to look at things. And in this example is through an equitable lens, which is behind this. And so I'm just going to play a series. The first one is 2 minutes. The next one is 1 minute, and I will pause it after each one so Mark can kind of give his thoughts on there. And as always, you are always free and very welcome to give your thoughts and input as well. So let's go ahead and just play this first one here. Good
And
evening, everyone.
there's
My name is
Christina.
Marwan Cameron. To answer the first question, what are three specific things you would like to see change within the city of Bremerton government? And what I would like to see change are individuals, policies, and procedures. For me, I believe that we need to abolish diversity and sensitivity training. I think over time, this has proven ineffective. As we see, it is 2022. And many folks say, wow, I can't believe that it's 2022 and these things are still happening. Uh, to that point, right now in 2021, police violence against Black individuals actually has increased post George Floyd. And so this, to me, needs to be changed. Joe Biden's State of the Union address, he said, "Refund the police, not defund the police." So qualified immunity, holding people accountable and responsible for their actions, needs to be something that happens from the bottom up and not from the top down. So I think individuals at this point need to be documented, investigated, and removed. Policies need to be changed. Procedures on how you act and how you govern need to be immediately changed. And those things need to be enacted with the zero tolerance to which we often are policed and governed. The other thing that I would say, because time is short, is in question two or in question three, if the city of Bremerton government were going to put some money toward dismantling racism, where would you want to see that money go? And I would say contracts, grants, and support for Black businesses. What I see that currently exists is a good old boy network, grandfathered business relationships, and equitable policies and practices to access grants and contracts, etc. An example of this would be either not getting information uh, in a timely manner, understanding that smaller organizations don't have the infrastructure to whip through an RFP and complete a contract or a grant. And so oftentimes we don't even have those opportunities. To that end, for many of us here in the community that have been established, there is a tokenism that happens. And I'm speaking for the Black community right now. Uh, what is historically been done from the time of slavery and meritorious manumissions is you have tokenized Black people that are in positions, and we can see these folks that hold many hats in many committees or groups. And because you know the dominant society feels safe with these folks, they end up being gatekeepers, and it makes it difficult for the diversity of thought because Black people are not a monolith to come forward and have their ideas um, heard and also enacted. And so I will concede the rest of my time until the next round. All right. So that was my first 2 minutes
Perfect
there.
timing.
Uh, if you would go ahead and give us your thoughts on that first salvo.
Um, I completely agree. And as we started off this conversation about the defund and refund or the police, I think they're both true, and that goes back to the need to have a deeper conversation about it. To the tokenism, actually, I think your second piece speaks brilliantly to that, because the person speaking in part is exemplifying the actuality of somebody who is in place as a gatekeeper who should be a representative. But you and I have had this conversation before. The United States Constitution was written with the idea that we have a representative government, which means the people we send to Congress are representative of the people in their districts. The people who go to the Senate are representative of the attitudes of the state. And it is so far from that now as to be, in a whole nother universe, an alternate universe, a multiverse, whatever you want to call it, speaking to the nerd in you. Um, we have politicians, and I'm not going to name any names locally, that have never spent a day in their life working for a living, trying to survive and pay rent. So, how can they know what the majority of the people they represent need or is important to them? When they've never had to worry about being late on a car payment, late on rent, late on power bills, having massive credit card debt because you're trying to just stay alive and paying, was it somewhere between 17 and 25% interest rates. It's, they don't understand what a poor tax is and how that relates, and that is mostly exemplified by uh, the Congress's move to ban Russian oil, which might be the right thing to do, but it's going to cascade to the average American in horrific ways. Gas prices are already surging; they're going to continue to surge more. Even though Russian oil only represents 3% of the total oil the U.S. uses, it represents a much bigger piece of prices at the market. Gas prices raise, prices of food raise, prices of clothing rise. It's just endemic all the way down through. And the fact that Congress is screaming about that and then blaming Biden for gas prices shows how disconnected they are. So going back to the need for representation, we really need a representative government, and for that we have to come together and decide what that looks like. We, all of us, not Marwan and I, not Marwan and I and the city of Bremerton, not Marwan and I and the racial equality, racial equity group. All of us have to sit down and have a voice, and we have the technology to do that these days. We just have to start having the conversation.
One of the reasons why um, my answer was given in the way that it was is oftentimes, there's a saying, right? Be careful about pointing out the plank in someone else's eye before you
Yep.
get the plank out of your own eye.
Yep.
And, a paradigm shift can be and should be one of, hey, I see that this is an issue. There's some inequities here. Um, and these things need to be called out. This is wrong. This is how this should be done, whatever the case may be. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you also have to look at the role that you play in it also. So where is your accountability? Where's your
Exactly.
accountability in the group that you belong to? What part do you play in that? And you may not know the part that you play in it that is having a negative impact. And so it takes that analysis, right? One of the terms that were thrown around yesterday was SWOT analysis, right? Which
Mhm.
is a business terminology. And I think a lot of us know that, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Internally looking at what makes you strong and what makes you weak, and then externally looking at your opportunities and the things that can threaten you. And you have to do that not only at the thing that you're passing judgment on, but also passing judgment on yourself or the group that you belong to and the role that you play in it. And that is a paradigm shift that oftentimes gets missed. And we can say that we do it, but we never do it with the same energy that we give it out to, right?
So
End
let's
up having to-
okay. You're gonna. I'm throwing my red flag up here
Go ahead. Go ahead.
because we have to talk about why that is.
Go ahead.
The first thing, I agree with you 100%.
Hmm.
And I think all paradigm shifts have to begin with a mirror. You have to look at yourself before you look at others, and that's a really hard thing to do. But what tools are we given to even begin that process, let alone the conversation? And one of the reasons we do our workshops is because we recognize in our analysis that we don't have the tools any longer to do the critical thinking, to even look. We are dissuaded from birth against asking the next question.
Mm.
Just accept what you got. And our education system in the United States, and I can't speak of the rest of the world, but in the United States, our education system is based on the Prussian model that gave us Nazi youth in Germany during World War II. It was initiated by industrialists to create workers, to give them just enough knowledge to be able to do their job, and to program them, indoctrinate them into being accepting of leadership and of guidance. And it has worked spectacularly well. You and I have offline conversations, and you rarely ever hear me say that people are stupid. I say people are indoctrinated. People by nature are not stupid. They're not lazy, but we're indoctrinating them not to ask the next question, not to challenge the status quo, and that has worked extraordinarily well in our system. And now we've taken creativity and all creative things out of school because we can't afford them, which kind of goes back to refund and defund the police. The things we need the most, we are taking resources away from, so that people will continue to follow the system even when it's not working for them. So we're back to the AA saying, Insanity is doing the same thing again and again, but we've trained people to accept that.
Well, that's why I put in the chat, what is your paradigm shift? And what you were saying is, if you're looking at the reflection and you need the tools, it's maybe the paradigm shift is going and gathering the tools, right?
Exactly. It's the first step. You have to look at yourself, and you have to get the tools to do the examination. You have to learn how to ask the next question. It's the first thing we teach in the workshops. Ask the next question. There is always a next question. You just need to figure out what it is and ask it.
Well, and we're in the information age. So
Yeah.
anything that you want to learn is out there and accessible to most everyone at this point. And that's what I did, during COVID, when I first started this podcast, I had a challenge. It was like meet 5 new people a month. And that's been so powerful, not only personally, but professionally also. It's been great for the organization. It's been great for me. So, that was my own paradigm shift. It's like, hey, we're isolated, we're, you know, uh social distancing at home. We've got these masks on, so even when we're out, we're staying away from each other. So you're gonna have to do something to overcome that. And so I was willing to have that paradigm shift and really extend myself
Oh,
out there.
so here's where I get to ask you the question we started talking about before the podcast started.
Uh-oh.
So how did that process make you a leader in the community now?
Oh, all right. You know what? I will couch that. Let me couch that for the end of the last video, and I will answer.
Okay.
Let me play the second one. That's a good one. You're you're
Okay.
jump you're jumping ahead. You're answering questions before the teacher asked the question.
Yeah, just the kind of student I was.
I know.
Karen Vargas in the space? Did she was she able to? No. All right. Marwan Cameron.
Yeah, there were 2 things. Now, before I go into that, so what happened was all the leaders that were present, they spoke for 2 minutes, and then the elected officials spoke for a couple of minutes, what they heard and what they felt, and then we had 1 more minute to come back in, and so this was the final response that I had. Uh,
And
just
Marwan,
research
can you play
fast.
her intro before that, because I think that speaks to the people who actually end up as the intro I heard before the show started, where the person was talking about how great everything is, telling people how great everything is, and that they will be embraced by just discovering what we have to offer.
Right before this one here.
I think so.
Let me see.
I believe this person was speaking as the executive director of the YWCA.
Let's see. Was it at the end of her one
I know
minute?
you played it for me, and she.
Angela talked about a lot about the professional leaders of color. We've got K Reef, our Kids Have Equity, Racial Equity and Empowerment Fund. There is a ton of different communities of color that you can talk to and learn from. And so how do you do that? Get out there and build those relationships. We'd appreciate it, and I'm sure you'd enjoy it.
So I think I missed it. I'm not sure where it was.
That was it. That was it.
Okay.
Okay. Just go do it.
So,
It was a statement, and it says, get up and go make those relationships.
yep.
And so after you talk, I'd like you to talk about leadership. Then I'd like to talk about how easy it is to make those relationships,
You got it.
because I got some insight on that.
We had Karen Vargas in the space. Did she was she able to?
No.
All right. Marwan Cameron.
Yeah, there were 2 things. I was doing some research to come up with some stats, and in my research, I came up with the 2017 June Health Disparity Report. And in that report, every demographic was actually listed except for Black people, which I thought was interesting. Another issue was there was a grant that came through Commerce to the county, and 5% was earmarked for BIPOC organizations. And if things are going to change, we talk about equity. What the county did was just go with the 5% minimum, right? They didn't go above and beyond that, knowing that we are the ones that are out here doing the work. And so those are the things that need to change without being told what needs to be changed. I was a little disheartened because I thought I would have heard from the council people what they had already planned or intended on doing based on the fact that we're voters and their constituents. And so that kind of concerned me. And so while it's great that this committee now exists and everyone wants to bring us to the table, I don't come to the table feeling, you know, thankful or honored because we are taxpayers, we are residents, we are citizens. We have been ill affected by these policies uh, from time immemorial, as Pastor Coleman was saying, 35 years of his experience being here. And so, if it's love that we're giving, then it's a tough love that needs to happen, and we need to be direct. So, oftentimes, will we come and say, "Thank you for allowing us into the space," and this and that, and whatnot. And no, we belong here. Power is taken; it is not given, and I encourage everyone to take their power. All right, so that was my second response there. So I'll get your remarks, and then I'll answer your questions there.
Yeah. Second time I've heard it, and holding them accountable, holding people accountable for what they need to do is part of it. But the other part of it is giving them a solution. And this came up during our conversation after your first section, and I'm thinking about it. I didn't bring it up to you. I was processing it in my own head that I approach life, and actually the fundamental approach of resilient ecosystems is that we need to provide solutions along with the issue. And I like the fact that you were in a great way doing that by saying they did the bare minimum. They didn't invite us to the table, and now that we're being invited to the table, I come to the table not feeling honored, but feeling like my voice should have been here all the way along. And the tokenism, I do want to go back to the intro to the piece, is that, all right, two things I want to say here. One is you'll hear me say things like people of color instead of black people, because diversity is that there's a lot more shades of black and brown and white than there aren't. So, and while black people and the black issues right now are prevalent and horrific, they're shared to some extent by Latinos and Asians and other people, not to the same extent, and taking slavery aside, but a lot of brushes are out there painting people. So I say people of color because we have been treating all people of color horribly, not as horribly as black people, but coming from a Jewish background myself, I have a little bit of understanding of that. Not any major, not the significant understanding of that, but my, parts of my family died in Dachau, Auschwitz, being horribly treated. So I say people of color because we need to change the core problem of our abuse of everybody. And you and I talk about that a lot. And by saying, and this is not me saying all lives matter, what I'm saying is we need to change the core fundamental abuse that we have in our culture. We have to. And right now, Black Lives Matter, Black people are being more abused than anybody else. So that needs to be addressed first and foremost.
And another thing, just to kind of build on what you're saying there, is I like your clarification. Like, I'm not saying that all lives matter, right?
Yeah.
And
all lives do matter, but it's not. But that's not in a political way. I personally think all lives do matter, but not in that political way.
Right. But that comes with the intellectual dishonesty. When people can't come together and have a conversation and then allow people to articulate a thought or an idea or process information in real time on the fly, knowing that they're probably going to say something that's inarticulate or wrong or offensive. They have no idea that it is. But when you build relationship, then you understand that that person isn't coming from a space of malice, right?
It's about intent.
It is about intent. And we have to build relationships so that we can understand that that is the intent, right? That it's not a trick bag or a red herring or whatever it is, right? And so that's the paradigm shift, another paradigm shift that needs to take place.
Yeah.
And that's why we've been able to like cultivate a relationship, right? And so we can have the hard conversations. And if you say something that I don't like or I feel offended about, I can have that conversation with you,
Ask. Yeah.
and then we'll talk back and forth about it, and we're good. And the same thing for you.
Mhm.
You can say something to me and it's like, hey, well, this is how I see this, or this is what I think about this, or this is the Jewish experience,
Yep.
and I can take that in and process that information and learn from it, and that we can have that dialogue and continue to grow from that. And from
Yep.
that, then I know the more that we have these conversations, if you say something that seems totally left, I don't fly off the handle. It's like, how dare you, you racist? You're, you're worse than Hitler. It's like, come on, man. We've been talking for months now and having these conversations, and I haven't shown you that that's who I am. So why, from one mistake or one slip up or
Or
disagreement or looking at
one
something,
different way of one different way of saying
yeah,
something than you
on
say it.
different lens, yeah, then
Yeah.
I'm condemned. So, that's where we need to get to, but we're only gonna get there is if we do expand our bubble, right? If you're always sitting next to the people you feel most comfortable with, well, what are you getting? How
So
is anything actually
and
gonna change?
and going back to the woman saying, "Well, just go out and build relationships." That's not as easy from my point of view as it may seem. I'm an old white guy, and most of my life early on, I've had black people in my life and have been friends. I moved to Washington State. It's the first time in my life that the black community wasn't part of my life. It's like there's so much more isolation up here than there was in Northern California. I mean, I don't go have dinner with black people up here because I don't know anybody up here. I mean, Marwan, you're probably the deepest relationship I've had, or more than just a conversation with somebody in years. And it's not from lack of desire. But again, I don't think of people as black. I think of people as people. But there just doesn't seem to be a conversation, an easy conversation to have. So somebody's telling me, go out and have relationships. It'll be a wonderful thing. Well, okay, I'll agree to be a wonderful thing. But how do you do that? Where's the melding pot? Where's the place where you can go and just build a relationship?
I think the answer to that question, it really lies within our children. We can learn a lot from our kids. I take my daughter to the park. She doesn't know any of the kids. They don't all look like her. And what happens? Instantaneously, they're running and playing together. And if you didn't know any better, you think they knew each other and they were in school, they were schoolmates. And we have to, in some ways, we need to be more childlike, you
We have
know?
to have a paradigm shift back to being that the simpler people that can build those kind of relationships and just go, hey, how's it going? Let's go talk.
But
Let's
we're
grab a
so
cup of coffee.
guarded.
Yeah.
Right, we're
Yeah.
so guarded, we don't wanna get canceled, right? We don't want any of the bad things to happen, we don't want the rejection, and so it is difficult, but, that all that said, again, that's exactly what I did during the pandemic,
Mhm.
and not to say that it's easy, and, I've had some, practice, leveraging again, I tell people all the time, you have a cornucopia, a gaggle, if you will, of knowledge, skills, and abilities, and the thing is that you can apply those abilities to other aspects of your life. And so look at the things that you're good at and apply that to something else, whether it's a hobby where you can meet someone else, or I'm a at this point I'm a public speaker because I was a teacher, right? So I'm used
Mhm.
to standing up and lecturing and speaking in front of folks. And so from doing that over and over, you get better at it. So doing a podcast is kind of a natural thing. I'm already used to being a gas bag and being loquacious. And I don't need no notes. I can talk for 3 hours. It's like kind of a running joke. It's like I could just go ahead, give me a subject, let's go. But I can leverage that and say, hey, it is uncomfortable to extend yourself to a stranger, not knowing what you're going to get back. But I can leverage that to have those conversations, right? the things I understand about communication and encoding and decoding information as it comes in, and miscommunication and all those things, and use that skill set, make a game out of it. This May, you and I, or Rezeco, is going to start doing the neighborhood potlucks, and
Yep.
my space is going to be the first one. And so food, everyone loves food. It's a great way to organize people around. You organized something at the family pancake house, and it was so well attended, and it was great, and it had a very eclectic group of different individuals that probably wouldn't have come all together in that space otherwise. And so
And it was very organic, which I loved.
yeah, while difficult, not impossible, can easily be done. We got about 8 minutes left. Let me play this last piece so you can ask the
Yep.
last question, and I can answer your questions. So at the end, I always kind of sign off and just kind of give my final thoughts. And so this is after the event was over. And again, I do want to give a big shout out to Bremerton React. They do a lot of work. They do a lot of work. As I said, I was telling Mark beforehand, I was in a meeting with the Kuye in the morning, and then they were in a Zoom meeting at 7 p.m. that she had sent me a link to, and I'm like, then they're still going. I had to take a nap in the middle of the day. Then they're doing this, and they are constantly doing the work, right? They truly are champions of getting out there and making their voices heard. But here are my final thoughts. Was the panel there? Definitely interested in getting your thoughts and feedback on what you heard. Uh, is this going to be more of the same? Is this a opportunity to move in a different direction? We shall see. If it's going to be, and that is only going to happen if us, as citizens and taxpayers, as I was saying before, are able to hold our elected officials accountable. And I know that we're so tremendously busy. We're still not through COVID. We've got global issues that impact us directly and indirectly here. And so it's difficult to say, you know what, I can't put anything else on my plate. I don't have time to try to figure out, what they're doing, why they're doing, how they're doing. I'm just trying to survive. But that attitude has kept us where we're at all this time. And while we are no longer in chains physically, there are a lot of metaphorical chains that still exist. There are a lot of chains that exist that we chain ourselves with.
Every minute of
And
every
I'm not
day.
speaking about Black people now. I'm talking about all of us. And so we need to unchain ourselves and understand that this has to be a priority. This is your life. This is the life of your children and their children. This is your quality of life, how you exist. And we may not be able to change the world, but we should be able to change the immediate community that we live in. So dare to be that change. And as cliche as that sounds, I'm very deadly serious. Power is taken and it's not given. Take your power. Let's be clear. Why the hell am I a leader? Why the hell do they consider me a leader? Why did they reach out to me to be on this panel? You have pastors of churches. What did Pastor Coleman say? Something like that church is 75 years old, right? Historic institution. You have business folks that have been doing the work for a long time. The tribe, Gets Up Strong, many others. Why me? 6 years ago, I was a part-time advisor at the college. Or maybe more than 6 years ago now. So how the hell now am I considered a leader? The answer to that is taking power, taking your place. So as I encourage the panel, I encourage you all to take your power because it is not given. If you are waiting for these people locally, state, federal, to change the situation and to make it better and to do right, you will die waiting. I'll stop there and get your thoughts.
Uh, I remember a cartoon. I think it was in Playboy in the '80s because they had some 70s and 80s, they had some brilliant writers and some brilliant cartoonists and
Oh wow,
illustrators.
you're gonna tell us you read it for the articles. Go ahead.
Well, in the 70s and 80s, absolutely. They had a picture of a vulture, two vultures on a wire, and a guy crawling along, and said, "Patience, my ass, I'm going to go kill something." And this thing, if you're waiting for somebody to die so that you can eat off the carcass, or you're waiting for some politician to change something in a positive way, either way, you're going to be waiting a long time. And you're right. You know that I don't particularly care for the phraseology about power being taken, because it has a lot of metaphorical ways that it could be read. But you're absolutely right. We have to take our power, and we have to come together. And many hands make light work. So if we come together, bringing each of our own powers to the table, how powerful is that? First three words of the Constitution of the United States: we the people. It didn't say your leaders will guide you. It said we the people of the United States of America.
Absolutely. And I would tell you, some of our conversation, it worked into my response at the end,
Mm-hmm.
my reflection, right? Because I'm hardlined on some of the things that I think about, um, and how I view things, and I may have I don't think it's an nihilistic viewpoint, but on some things it's like I don't know if this thing can change, so why bother? But I'm still in the fight and still trying to make the change that I can. And so, those things you got to have those conversations, because when your cup starts to be depleted, other folks have to help to fill your cup back up, right?
Amen. Amen to that. And I'll answer, two questions I frequently get, though I know you've never asked me, is people say, "Mark, how can, with knowing all that you know about what's wrong and what's going on and the challenges we face, and trust me, I spent 20 years learning it. How do you stay so positive? How do you stay so optimistic?" And I'll give you the straight answer that I give most people: what other choice do I have?
Mm,
I can curl up, I can hide away from it, but I chose the color of pill that I took, and I took the pill of knowledge. So either I curl up and die, or I don't go quietly into that good night.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, as we wrap up, any final thoughts? I think I escaped answering your question. Or maybe I answered it in my final response there.
Because you stood up. I mean, the answer to the question is because you're willing to stand up and give voice to many people who feel voiceless.
Yeah.
And the reason we work together is because my goal is to bring those people up, and give them their voices back.
Yeah. And that's what this platform is for.
Yep.
Sure. For sure.
It's a fast hour.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
it
it's
is
a
a
good hour.
fast hour. It is a
Yeah.
good hour.
One of my favorite shows, and I do a lot of shows. I
Yeah.
do a lot of shows. But yeah, that is our hour. I feel like Dr. Cameron. Our hour is up. Our time is up. So next week we'll talk about
More
but yes,
stuff that matters.
that's right. We will be here next Wednesday at 12 p.m. If you would, for the next week, consider your paradigm shift. What can you do? What are you willing to do?
And
What
show
will
up
it?
for the live show and add your voice.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Pastor Ellington says, great show. And stay tuned. As soon as we get everything situated, we've got great announcements coming from New Horizon uh, Ministries. We've got a lot of stuff going on there. So stay tuned. As you know, Pastor and I also do a show, but it is on hiatus because there's a lot of stuff to sort out. But I want to give you the last word today, Mark.
So things are going to get hard with gas prices going up, with food prices going up, with all of the things that are going on in our world right now. Work together. Work together. Carpool as much as you can. Combine chores. Support each other. Help each other. Let's all be more human.
Yeah. All right. I lied. I'm gonna take the last word. Knowledge, skills, and abilities can be applied to other things. We are coming to the end of a pandemic. We had to find a way to work together in certain ways, right? Take the good parts of something bad and apply it now. You're gonna have to get through. All right. All right. So for Mark, I am Marwan. This is The Conduit. We will see you at 12 p.m. And again, we'll be back here in 2 hours with Bremerton Housing Authority and Kitsap Community Resources. Until then, bye-bye.